All right, welcome everybody. We're a minute past noon, which means that's enough time for people to click on their link and get in here. My name is Liam Threlkill. I'm a program manager and policy analyst at the Utah League of Cities and Towns, specifically with the Local Administrative Advisor Program. If you're unfamiliar with that program, it was funded in the 2023 legislative session. We're just over a year of it in operation, and it helps to give you and your smaller communities that don't have full-time administrators administrative help to do things like updating your ordinances, writing and managing grants, creating strategic plans, and so forth. We're really excited about that program. We were able to get almost 600 projects done in over 100 communities this last fiscal year, and we are excited to do a lot more. Today we have Adam Lenhard with us, who's a former city manager for St. George. And we are excited to have him teach us a little bit about strategic planning in rural Utah. So with that, I will kick it over to Adam.
All right, great. Thank you, Liam. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We're really happy that you joined us for today. As Liam said, I'm Adam Lenhart. I've been involved in local government in Utah for a long time, and I am really excited about today's presentation because we're going to learn about strategic planning. And as in previous webinars for the Local Administrative Advisor Program, if you've got questions along the way, please feel free to type those in the comment section. And then at the end, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A period for any questions that you might have. So let's jump right in. This is the outline for our plan for our meeting today. There we go. All right, this is our outline. We're going to define strategic planning, and we're going to talk about its purpose and the benefits that a good strategic plan can bring to your community. Then we're going to talk about the main elements or parts of a strategic plan, including how you can customize these elements to suit your needs, because we know that not every community is the same. And then we're going to talk about SMART goals, and you may be familiar with this acronym. This is a guide for helping us to create good, effective goals. And then finally, we are going to share some best practices and tips for creating a strategic plan in your city or town. So in addition to the content that we're going to have in the presentation today, I've done something else for you that I hope is going to be really helpful. So I've gone out and I've downloaded, I think it's like 28 different strategic plans from cities and towns across the United States. They're all very different communities. And I put those in a shared folder. Liam's going to paste the link in the comments, and we'll make sure that that is available to you. But one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because it's so helpful to see how other communities have approached the strategic planning process. And so you can use all of those plans as a reference for creating your own. So I hope that that's helpful to you, and we'll make sure that you have access to all of those strategic plans. So let's get started. Let's talk about our definition. What is a strategic plan? Very simply, a strategic plan is a blueprint. It's your community's goals and the steps that you're going to take to achieve those goals. The average strategic plan is going to cover a time span of about 3 to 5 years. That's kind of the best practice. In that shared folder, you will see strategic plans that look out as far as 20 years into the future. And that's totally fine. You can do that. There's no reason you can't. The caveat there is that things change quickly in our communities, and it can be tough to accurately predict your circumstances and your priorities beyond that 3 to 5 year horizon. So just keep that in mind. But the best practice then, 3 to 5 year horizon, and once you have your plan in place, you can go back to that plan and you can just update it or amend it as necessary. Once you've adopted a strategic plan, that plan is a fantastic guide for policy making, decision making, budgeting, and then your departmental operations. So department work plans ought to match up to the content, the priorities and goals that you've got in your plan. Keep in mind that a strategic plan is often written for multiple audiences. And what I mean by that is you've got external audiences, you've got residents, you've got your business community, and then you have an internal audience, which is your city employees, those who work for your city or town. So you are approaching this with multiple audiences in mind, and that makes your plan really versatile. A strategic plan is not required by state statute. So none of what we're talking about today is mandatory. But because a strategic plan has so many benefits, of course, we highly recommend that you have one. A strategic plan is also not the land use general plan that is required by statute for municipalities. The strategic plan is a totally different document from your land use general plan. That said, it's very likely that there's going to be some overlapping content. Most strategic plans have some initiatives and goals that are geared around land use, because land use is so much of what we're doing in our cities and towns. So you're going to have some overlap, but I just wanted to be clear that this is a different document altogether. And along those same lines, a strategic plan is an administrative document, and you could even consider it a management document as well, but it's not a legislative document. And what I mean by that is your strategic plan, even though you should formally approve it, it does not carry the weight of law. It's not an ordinance. It is administrative. A strategic plan is as simple or as comprehensive as you want it to be. So in that share folder, for example, you'll find strategic plans that are just a single page. The entire strategic plan is one page. And then on the other end of that spectrum, you're going to see plans that are upwards of 300 pages. Both are fine. Do whatever works for your community. There's no minimum length or anything like that. Do what works for you. Make your strategic plan your own. A strategic plan is also as important and useful as you make it. If you adopt a plan, you go through all this work and you adopt a strategic plan, but then it just sits on the shelf and gathers dust, it's not going to be helpful, right? But if you keep that plan front and center and visible in your community and in your organization, and I'm going to give you some tips at the end of the presentation on how to do that, then your plan can become really meaningful, really effective in your community. So what is the purpose of having a strategic plan? Well, I've got an opinion. This is just my opinion formed over my career in local government, not the official position of the league, but my opinion is that great communities, great places in general, rarely just happen on their own. I think, and it seems to me like great places are usually the result of deliberate, focused planning and hard work over many years. What a strategic plan does, the heart of a strategic plan, is that it's a plan for the future. You're identifying your priorities and then you're setting goals. And that plan helps you prepare for the future, and it also helps you to influence the future. A good strategic plan is going to give you that roadmap for becoming the type of community that you want to be. I've always liked this Greek proverb. You may have seen it before. As elected officials and city staff, your strategic plan is how you're planting those trees that provide shade for future generations. You're planning for your children, you're planning for their children and generations into the future. So keep that in mind. There are so many benefits to having a strategic plan. I'm going to hit a few of those quickly. I'll acknowledge there are probably many other benefits that I haven't captured here. These are just a few that came to mind. First is that a strategic plan gives your team clear direction. It ensures that everyone is working together towards common objectives. A strategic plan also helps you know where to allocate your resources. There are so many needs in your communities, and a strategic plan, again, identifies your priorities so that you know where to allocate those resources. Next, a good plan is going to increase transparency and accountability. Just the act of adopting a plan, writing it out and getting it out there to the public, that increases transparency. And then as you start to, commit to your plan and achieve those goals and make progress, that builds trust with the public as well. A good strategic plan is also going to help you make better decisions because you know what you want to accomplish. And because of that, it's easier to make decisions that move you closer to your goals. It's a reference point that you can keep going back to. It's also a great way to involve your community. So when you involve your residents, your businesses, other stakeholders in that planning process, it has this effect of fostering this sense of community, this sense of belonging, and even I would say like a feeling of ownership. People really love to be involved and have a say in the future of their community. Another benefit is that it encourages innovation and improvement. So you're going to set some goals as part of your strategic plan, and those goals should be challenging. And anytime we're faced with a challenging goal, that kind of forces us to dig deep, and to come up with new ideas, creative solutions, and hopefully in the process we're building a culture of continuous improvement. And what I mean is everybody in your organization is working together to incrementally just get a little better every day. And that's always a culture that I've wanted to be part of that continuous improvement. A few more here. A good strategic plan can help with economic development because you can include initiatives that are aimed at attracting businesses, improving your infrastructure, enhancing quality of life. It can also help you with risk management. In your plan, you can identify potential risks and then come up with strategies to mitigate or avoid those risks. And then finally, there are benefits in a strategic plan for measuring your performance. So as you make progress towards your goals, you can refer back and say, hey, here's everything we've accomplished. Then you can set new goals and keep going. So those are some of the benefits of a strategic plan. I want to talk about the main parts or elements that we find in a lot of strategic plans. And there are 5 main elements that we see a lot in many strategic plans. I'm going to show you all 5, and then I'm going to talk about each one of them. But I want to emphasize here, this is really important. You can make your plan however you want. These are the 5 most common elements that we just see over and over in a strategic plan, but there are no hard rules here, except for maybe one that I'll mention in just a second. But start with the basics. And then if you feel up for more, you can always add additional content. You can add additional elements to your plan. So the most common elements that we see in strategic plans are typically going to be a mission statement. And again, I'll define these for us. A vision statement, core values, and then finally the policy priorities and goals, and, the things that you want to accomplish. These last 2 are linked together. They are the heart of your strategic plan. This is the most important content. When you're creating your strategic plan, this is probably where you're going to spend most of your time and effort. Truthfully, in my opinion, you could adopt a strategic plan that doesn't have a mission statement or a vision statement, that doesn't have core values. And as long as you still have clear priorities and good goals, then you're going to have a great strategic plan. But if you haven't clearly identified your priorities and goals, then you don't have a plan because that is what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, that's the purpose of your strategic plan. So that might be the one hard rule. A strategic plan has got to have priorities and goals. So let's look at each of these elements. I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll give you some examples from actual city and town strategic plans. So first up is the mission statement. This should be very simple. This is a clear and concise statement of your organization's purpose and primary objectives. And when I say organization in the context of local government, I'm referring to your municipal corporation, your city or town. So it's just stating what you do and the reasons your organization exists. And don't overthink this, because most cities and towns exist for the same reasons. So it's normal that your mission statement is going to look very similar to many other communities' mission statements. Don't stress that you have to come up with something really out of the box or different or creative. You're just stating what you do, right? You're providing services to your community. Let's look at some examples. So I've got a few here. And right up front, I wanna offer just a quick apology. One thing that I always try to avoid doing is just having a wall of text on a slide and reading from that. It is a little bit necessary. I'm going to do it as little as possible, primarily for the benefit of those who may be listening to the webinar today, or perhaps the room that you're watching this presentation, you may not be able to see all the text. It's kind of the nature of the content that we're dealing with here. I'm gonna read as little as possible, but some of it is important for us to go through. So that's kind of my caveat and apology, but I will minimize it. So at the top left here, this community said their mission is to foster a safe, vibrant, livable, and inclusive community through effective stewardship and quality public services. Great. Simple. That's what cities do. To the right, an even simpler mission statement, exceptional service for an exceptional community. On the bottom, a leader in the state by providing excellent municipal services that align with community priorities. So these are all good. The design is different, the aesthetic is different, but it's essentially what cities and towns do. Here's two more mission statements. The city of Richland is responsible for furnishing cost-effective services and well-maintained facilities, safeguarding the public and property, etc. We've got Park Cities here on the bottom. It's very, very simple, evolving and sustaining a complete community. That is their mission. That's what they see as their mission for their organization. So the mission statement, again, very simple. You're just stating who you are, what you do. Pretty simple overall. When you're creating a strategic plan, your mission statement, you ought to be able to knock that out pretty easily. No need, again, to try to get too creative here. Next up is the vision statement, and this is different. Mission statement, who you are and what you do. A vision statement looks to the future, and it's intended to be an aspirational description of what you want your community to become in the future. What are you trying to create? That is your vision statement. And the vision statement really should capture what your stakeholders most value about your community. And it's meant to be inspiring and values driven. So let's look at some examples of a few different communities' vision statements. Love this one at the top left. This is kind of a combination, in my opinion, kind of a combination mission statement and vision statement, and that's totally fine. This community says, we are a resilient, agriculturally based community that takes pride in our rich farming heritage while fostering innovation and sustainability. Our vision is, I love this, it's clear. They say, our vision is to preserve our rural character, support local farmers, protect our natural resources, and ensure that future generations can enjoy a healthy, prosperous, and balanced lifestyle. Great vision statement. Really like that one. Let's compare that to the one on the right. Our community envisions becoming a hub of innovation, entrepreneurship, cultural activity, etc. When you read these vision statements, you can tell these are very different communities. And what I like about that is they are customized to their communities. You can read these vision statements and you can get a feel for what's important to them. It's reflected in that statement. And I think both of these are very good. There's another one on the bottom. You can see just a little bit different approach and how they, established and defined their vision. We'll look at a few more. This one on the top, the last two sentences, I like these. The city is safe, vibrant, and family friendly. The community you'll want to call home. Every time I read that, it reminds me of that phrase that we hear so often. It's almost become kind of cliche at this point. A great place to live, work, and play. That's a vision statement. That's what that's the ideal for the community you're trying to create. for the future. This one on the bottom, the city balances being a hub for businesses, arts, outdoor recreation, and other cultural events, ensuring strong core municipal services. Again, the values are set forth very clearly. You can tell what they want to preserve and build on in their future vision for their community. So these are all really good. Again, your vision statement should match your community and where you want to be as an organization. So you've stated what your mission is. You've identified, the vision that you have for the future. Next up, a very common element in strategic plans is your core values. So core values are the fundamental qualities and guiding principles that exist in your organization. These ought to be non-negotiable. That's what we're saying by core values, and they should dictate behavior and action within the organization. So let me show you some examples, and this will make a little more sense, I think. So on the left, this community said we've got 3 values: teamwork, integrity, and excellence. And then they've defined how they will incorporate these values into their work. On the right, this community took a different approach. They just listed what those values are. Different approaches, both perfectly valid and really good. A few more here. This city at the top left, they turned their core values into a values statement. Just another way to do it. It means the same and has the same effect. On the right, that community listed 4 core values, and then they defined what each of those values mean to them. I love the one at the bottom. I'm biased. I was involved in creating this list of core values. This is for Clearfield City. And one of the things that I really liked that Clearfield did is it took these core values and then it made these values the basis for their employees' performance reviews, for their evaluations. And so each employee at the city, whether they were a police officer or a utility billing clerk or a recreation manager, each employee had all 8 of these core values, and then they had some very specific metrics that could be used to evaluate how well that employee was incorporating that core value into their performance for the organization. So in that way, they were able to keep it really front and center and meaningful with their employees. Now, one final note on core values: you cannot fake these. If you adopt a core value that is not truly valued, everyone will know it. They'll see right through it. You run the risk of undermining your entire plan. For example, if you state in your plan that one of your core values is accountability, but then nobody is ever held accountable for poor performance, that core value is not going to be respected. It's not going to be effective. So core values have to be authentic in order to really be considered a core value. Okay, so far we've covered the first 3 main elements. You've said who you are and what you do in your vision statement, or in your mission statement, excuse me. You've identified the future, what you want your community to become in your vision statement, and then you've identified the core values that drive you. And now we get into the heart of your strategic plan, the most important part, which is your policy priorities and goals. Policy priorities may be a new term. It's existed in the local government vernacular for a long time. I don't mean for it to be confusing. When I say policy priorities, I'm just talking about your biggest picture priorities, the biggest issues. So you're going to identify what those priorities are, what your policy priorities are, and then you're going to set goals that are geared towards helping you, maintain and address those priorities. Might be helpful to look at a definition. Policy, this is the most simple definition I could come up with. Policy is really the actions that a government does or chooses not to take to address an issue. That's policy. It's just what your government is doing or actively choosing not to do around an issue. So your policy priorities then are those high level, big picture priorities that are kind of motivating your work on a daily basis. These are the most important issues or areas of focus. And once you identify these priorities again, they become the basis for the goals of your strategic plan. So again, let's look at some examples. On the left, this community said that one of their priorities is to be a thriving mountain town. Another one is preserving and enhancing the natural environment. So those are these overarching priorities, right? On the right, this community, they didn't use the term policy priorities, which again is perfectly okay. They called them the 5 strategic priorities. And I really like these: high performance government, financial sustainability, focused development, quality of life, and an engaged workforce. So a few minutes ago, I mentioned that your strategic plan is going to be written to address multiple audiences. And this is a really good example of that. So that 4th strategic priority, quality of life, right? That implies the quality of life of the entire community, right? Compare that to the 5th one, an engaged workforce. That's certainly meant to be looking inward at the organization itself, making sure that city and town employees are engaged. So you can see that example of the multiple audiences. Again, different approaches, different designs, different aesthetic, both great. Let's look at just a couple more examples here. So Fort Collins, Colorado, they have 7 policy priorities: high performing government, culture and recreation, a safe community. On the right, this community called their policy priorities guiding principles. Again, doesn't really matter what you call it. It has the same effect. This community said, their guiding principles are people, environment, community prosperity, service excellence, and equity. So again, the highest level priorities in your community. I put these 2 on the same slide because they're so visually similar. I just took these straight from these strategic plans. This one on the left, I really like it. This is from Snohomish, Washington. And the name of their strategic plan was Imagine Snohomish. So they've got their plan name there, their mission statement, promoting vitality and preserving character. And then they've listed their policy priorities kind of on the outside of that circle: an outstanding quality of life for all residents, a vibrant local economy, a thriving regional destination. And then when you dive into that plan, you'll see each one of those policies has goals that are associated with that priority. Then on the right, similar design, mobility, infrastructure, city leadership, and services. Great ways to approach and then visually communicate what those priorities are. I want to again emphasize, you don't need to hire a graphic designer. You can just list these on a piece of paper, and as long as they're meaningful to you, they reflect your values and your priorities, then it's going to be perfectly fine. But it's nice to kind of dress it up a little bit if you can. When I saw these, I thought for sure these communities both hired the same consultant to help in creating their strategic plan because they are so visually similar. But good examples. Another example that I wanted to show you, again, this one is from Clearfield City. They've got their policy priorities listed, and they've defined with a little more detail and some bullet points what those priorities are, what they mean. And then they put their core values on there and some pretty pictures from the city. And what Clearfield did is they actually took this image, got a really high resolution version of this, and they printed it. They had it put into really nice frames, and they hung this image all over their city facilities. So in their conference rooms, in their employee break rooms, in their council chambers, they put this thing everywhere so that it was always front and center with their employees, and their employees could have that constant reminder: hey, this is what's important, and this is what we value, and this is how we're gonna direct our work efforts here at the city. So that was a really good thing that Clearfield did. I like that. I think it's a good practice. So once you identify your priorities, like I've said, the next step is you're going to set some goals. Goals, many times in various plans, they might be called initiatives or objectives or tactics. Again, whatever you call it, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. As long as it's clear to you and you can clearly communicate that in your plan, perfectly acceptable. But no matter what you call it, this is where your plan shifts from observations and aspirational statements to specific action items that you're going to work on that move your community forward and make it better. Like we've said, your goals need to be aligned with your policy priorities. And of course, I have to mention when it comes to setting goals, some goals are better than others. They really are. The reality is that goal setting can be kind of tricky. And to have a really effective goal, there are some things, some criteria that your goal should include in order for it to be meaningful. And this is where SMART goals come into play. So SMART is an acronym. Again, you may be familiar with this. This acronym helps us set effective goals. This applies to all types of goals, personal goals, professional goals, and of course, those that we are going to include in our strategic plan. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So think of these as the criteria for a good goal. If your goal doesn't address each of these criteria, it probably won't be as effective as it could be. Doesn't mean that it's a bad goal. It just, these criteria help us set really effective goals. So specific, clearly define what you want to accomplish. Don't generalize. Don't be vague. Vagueness will kill a goal. Clearly define what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Next, it should be measurable in the sense that establish criteria so that you can track your progress on that goal and then determine when it has been achieved. You don't want it to be open-ended. Next is achievable, so setting goals that are realistic and that are also attainable given your resources and constraints. So you always want to be careful that your goals are things that are within your control and that you can actually accomplish through the right amount of effort. Next is that they should be relevant. We've talked about this. They should align with broader objectives, your policy priorities, right? To ensure they're meaningful and worthwhile. And then goals need to be timely, time-bound. So set a deadline as part of the goal, and that creates a sense of urgency and keeps you focused on that goal until it's complete. So when we're setting goals, there are some best practices. In addition to the SMART criteria, there are some other things that you can do to set really good goals. And just want to share a few of these with us. First, break down larger goals. So take a larger, more complex goal, break it down into smaller, more manageable tasks or milestones. Write your goals down. That I think applies maybe more to personal goals because, again, the whole point of our strategic plan is to identify priorities and then write those goals down, get them in the plan. This increases accountability, and then it gives us a reference point. We can constantly look back to review progress, make adjustments. Create an action plan for your goals. So come up with a detailed plan that outlines all of the steps that are necessary to complete that goal. You can include timelines, the resources that are going to be required, who's responsible for completing that goal. Prioritize your goals, rank them based on importance and urgency. Focus on the highest priority goals, and then that makes sure that you're spending your time on the things that matter most. And then challenge yourself. We hear the term stretch goals. So you want goals to be challenging, but they also do need to be realistic. A few more best practices on creating SMART goals. Periodically review your goals and make adjustments where necessary. Circumstances change, things happen. It's always good to go back to those goals and say, is that still a goal? Is that still a priority? And then make adjustments if you need to. Celebrate the milestones and achievements along the way. In local government, it's never done. You probably all felt that. There's always something else to do. You rarely get to just rest and go, okay, we're done. It just doesn't really happen. But don't forget to stop periodically and look at what you have accomplished and celebrate that. Really underrated. It can reinforce positive behavior when you do that. It can boost motivation in your organization. Just take time to celebrate, throw yourselves a little party or something. Stay flexible. Again, as time progresses, you're going to have new information, circumstances change, new opportunities, new challenges. And so, again, adjust as necessary. go out there and get feedback on your goals. Talk to trusted colleagues and mentors, friends, stakeholders in your community, and then get feedback and support for your goals. That can help you stay accountable for completing those. Again, align your goals with the long-term vision. Okay, so we've talked about identifying your policy priorities, those big issues that are so important to you. And then we've talked about setting goals that are based on those priorities. What I want to do is I want to show you how one community approached this and structured it in their plan. And hopefully this starts to all come together and it makes sense, all of the stuff that I'm talking about here. So we are going to look at some screenshots that I've taken from the City of Moab's strategic plan. And I'm gonna walk us through how they approach this. So Moab identified their policy priorities. I want to say there were maybe 7 or 8 different priorities. And in their plan, they called them pillars, which I really like, pillars of their community. That's really good. So they had all of their priorities listed. These are the first 3. I couldn't fit all of them on the screen and have it still be visible. So I just took a screenshot of the first 3 pillars or policy priorities: tourism trajectory and economic diversification, affordability and equity, leadership and decision making. The others, were further down in the page or in the plan. What I really like about this, one of the things, is that they've got this system for measuring their progress. So this plan was adopted, I want to say, a couple of years ago, and then periodically they would go through and on the city's website, which I believe is where I took these screenshots, excuse me, they've actually got this metric to basically report their progress. That's a great approach. I really like that. On the right-hand side, you can see that each of these pillars has its own goals. So tourism trajectory and economic diversification, there are 8 goals under that pillar, under that policy priority area, 9 goals for affordability and equity, et cetera. So what I want to do is I want to drill down into this first priority, and let's look at some of the goals. 8 goals for tourism trajectory and economic diversification. Again, I couldn't fit all 8 on the screen, so I just took a screenshot of the first 3. I really like how they have this color-coded system for measuring progress. That's really good. Visually, we can see, how they're making progress or not towards their goals. And then each of these goals, so again, these are the first 3 goals under that first policy priority. They've got adopt a downtown master plan, begin developing a complete streets policy, continue to implement their transit program, and then there were 5 more. And another thing that I want to point out here is for each of these goals, adopt a downtown master plan. You can see next to that, they've got 4 different objectives that are part of that goal. So just a minute ago, we said one of our best practices for goal setting is to take a larger, more complex goal and break it down into little, bite-sized initiatives that are easier to, get done. So let's look at that. Let's take the downtown master plan goal and let's look at the objectives that are associated with that goal. Think of this like a waterfall, okay? You start, at the top with, the priorities, then you've got goals, and then each goal is broken down even further into, individual tasks, action items, initiatives, in this case, objectives, okay? So it's all coming together here. Let's look at these 4 objectives for the goal to adopt a downtown master plan. So here it is. Again, they've got this progress tracking system shown here, and they've got the 4 objectives. So they need to issue a request for proposals for a consultant to help create that downtown master plan. Next, apply to the CIB for planning funding, identify infrastructure shortfalls, and then get their engineering and planning departments participating in their technical team. Last update, that's great communication. I like that a lot. So just for fun, what I wanted to do is I want to apply the SMART criteria to see how smart these goals are. And again, I want to say this is in no way meant to be a criticism, because Moab's strategic plan is really well done. But I just want to point out how the SMART criteria can help us set really good, effective goals. Okay, so we've got our SMART criteria, and we're going to look at that first objective or action item. to issue the RFP for the downtown master plan. So is that goal specific? I think it is. They need to issue the RFP, right? It's clear what needs to be accomplished. We could also argue that it's measurable because the RFP either gets issued or it doesn't. It's also achievable and realistic. I think that ought to be something that they could easily accomplish. And that leaves time bound. And it's really the only criteria that's missing from this goal. And for that reason, the only improvement I would suggest is that they give themselves a deadline to get this done. Another small improvement is that they could specifically assign it to a specific person or department within the organization. There's a good chance they did that internally and it's just not reflected in the plan. But that type of specificity is really helpful in creating good, effective goals. So if I were to, offer feedback on this first goal, I might suggest that it be rewritten as the city manager's office to issue the RFP for the downtown master plan prior to December 31st, 2024. Again, I want to be clear, I'm not criticizing Moab, very good plan. I just want to point out again how the SMART criteria can turn an average goal into a really good, achievable goal. Okay, so we've talked about the main elements that we see a lot in strategic plans. There is a lot of other stuff you can put in your plan. If you go out into that shared folder, you start looking through various strategic plans, you're going to see all kinds of elements. And these are all, totally optional. If you like them and you feel like you want to add them, go for it. First would be an executive summary. This is at the beginning of your plan. Oftentimes it's authored or at least signed by the mayor or maybe the town or city manager. If you had a consultant help you with that, they may provide kind of that forward and summary. In an ideal world, all of our residents are so interested in strategic planning and it's their top priority and they're going to read your entire strategic plan. We know that's not the reality. People are just so busy and they're just, trying to survive on a day-to-day basis. Can we expect that they read the whole thing? We'd love if they did, but an executive summary can be a great way to reach an audience, with a more succinct version of your plan for those who just don't have the time or interest to read the whole thing. So an executive summary is great. Another thing that you'll see a lot is a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a tool that you use. Basically what it does is it helps your organization kind of identify their internal strengths and weaknesses and then external opportunities and threats. And its purpose is to assess your current position, what your state is today, and then look out on the landscape and see what opportunities are out there and what threats exist to your organization. I'm going to show you an example of this in just a minute. We'll come back to it. But very common element. Another thing you could do is provide a financial analysis, and this could just be an estimate or a summary of how the financial implications of your plan. How much do you think it's going to cost? What type of expenditures are going to be required here. Again, this is not your budget, but it should roll into your budget. It should certainly influence your budget. So you could do a financial analysis as well. You could have a communications plan that just says how you're going to get your plan out to the community and keep it front and center. You could include resident or stakeholder surveys. All great content, totally optional, that can add some good value to your strategic plan. So here's a SWOT analysis. This community said they feel like its strengths are delivering service to their residents. They think they have really good parks and they think they have really good special events. And then their weaknesses, they identified they need to get better in communications and education. They need to get better at customer service, et cetera. They looked out there and they said, okay, what are the opportunities for our organization? And there's an opportunity for better citizen engagement, an opportunity to promote more diverse economic development, and then some threats. The cost of housing, of course, the cost of everything, implications to their tax base, managing land use. So in the strategic planning process, if you do a SWOT analysis, you would typically do it really early on. One of the first things you would do is a SWOT analysis because the results that you get in your SWOT analysis, those can help shape your priorities and your goals. So the way this might work is you would then, in your plan, set goals to maintain your strengths and keep doing them well. You would set goals to improve your weaknesses. You would set goals to take advantage of the opportunities, and then goals to mitigate or avoid the threat. So that's how a SWOT analysis could be incorporated into your plan. All right, let's talk about best practices, just tips in general for creating a strategic plan. First, obtain community input. This is really important. A strategic plan serves the community, so it needs to take the community's needs into consideration. You could go out there and do like neighborhood open houses and meet with people and ask them, what's important to you? What do you value? You can hold workshops, hearings, you can do a survey. It's just really helpful to get the pulse of your community. Next is you want to approve your plan in a formal meeting. Again, this is not a legislative document. You probably wouldn't do it by ordinance. So an agenda item might look like resolution to adopt the 5-year strategic plan. Okay, take your time and get it right. Don't rush. I really like this one. Let the vision drive the resources. Put vision before resources. So instead of saying, we've got $25,000 left over in our general fund at the end of the year, what should we do with it? Instead of that, you would say, okay, here are our goals and strategies and tactics in our plan. Which of these can we fund with the $25,000 we have left over in the general fund? And then next, update as needed. I would say, especially anytime you have a significant change in your community, new leadership, new elected officials, you got a new group of elected officials coming in, that's a great time to look at your plan, make sure that everybody's still on board with that plan, and then make updates as needed. Keep it simple. Talked about a lot of different elements. Focus on priorities and goals, and then you can add more if you want. Make key assignments. This is really important. In many communities, it's going to be real hard to get everybody involved in the strategic planning process. And so what often happens is you'll appoint a steering committee, not a legislative body, just a committee. You want to include residents, elected officials, and staff there, and that group is responsible for the bulk of the strategic plan process. And then often they're bringing that to the legislative body for review and feedback to make sure that they're on the same track. Now, ideally, you want all of your elected officials involved in the strategic planning process. I think that's so important. But if it's not possible, and by the way, if you do, of course, it's a public meeting. Notice those meetings. But really important to have the elected officials involved, because ultimately it is the elected officials that are going to approve this plan. Okay, in addition, you want to appoint a committee chair. Every strategic plan is going to need that number one cheerleader. You need the champion for the plan. A strategic plan is going to be a little bit of work, absolutely, without a doubt. All the good, meaningful things often do, require a little bit of work, and it's just essential that you have that number one person. So if I were to tell you, okay, you're starting your strategic plan process today, who's your chair? Most organizations, most of you can probably think, oh yeah, I know who it's going to be. It's going to be that person that just has boundless energy and enthusiasm and the time to dedicate to this process. I would suggest that it's a city or town employee, simply because of the time commitment and the fact that they're there, and that can be part of their job duties and responsibilities, but it doesn't have to be. And then just get started. It can feel overwhelming if you've never done a strategic plan before. It can feel overwhelming to say, how do we even get this process started? What I would recommend is you just put it on an agenda and you start talking about it. There's something magical about that. I don't know what it is. You put it on your work session agenda, discussion on creating a strategic plan, and have people around the table just start talking about, what could this look like? Why would we do it? What would we want to accomplish? And then you can move into, if everybody's on board, then decide who your steering committee is going to be, put the chair in place, and go from there. But just put it on an agenda and get started. Some more best practices. if this is your community's first strategic plan, then you have no choice but to start from scratch. Even then, borrow from other successes. So go in that shared folder and just start looking at how different communities approached the process and then the end result, the plan that they actually came up with. Borrow from their success. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Don't feel, this big heavy burden that, how do we do this? We've never done it before. In that shared folder, you are going to find so many great examples. Go in there and go, oh, hey, I like this element. We're going to use that. We're going to use this from this other plan. Customize those, obviously, to your needs. These are public documents. They're in the public domain. So there's not necessarily copyright issues, but of course, you want your plan to be authentic. I would advise against just wholesale copying and pasting from others. But if there's some similarities and you're, recreating what somebody else did somewhere else, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. If you do have an existing plan in place, build on that, build on the past. And then you're obviously planning for the future. If you've got an existing plan and the bones of that plan are still good, then keep that and just make updates as necessary. Utilize data whenever you can use hard numbers and real data in your plan. That adds credibility for sure. And then measure and report your progress. What I've seen that's really good is, like an end of the year article in your community newsletter. The mayor or manager will, talk about the plan, and here's the progress we made this year, and here's where we fell short and how we're regrouping for next year to keep moving on this thing. Again, be bold, but realistic. At the beginning of the presentation, when we defined strategic plans, I said that your plan is only as important and useful as you make it. And that is so true. If you adopt a plan and then again, it just sits on the shelf, it's going to be forgotten quickly. It won't, result in any change in your community. But if you make it a focal point of your meetings, your budget process, your goal setting, your department work plans, then it starts to become really effective. So keeping your plan highly visible means that it's important and it's going to be more effective. So how do we keep our plans visible? We've done this work. We don't want it to just go away. Here's a couple of tips. I love this first one. Include it in interviews with prospective employees. Now, you don't need to do this for every position necessarily, but if you have a high-level position, department head, new manager, something like that, I have seen remarkable results by incorporating the strategic plan in the interview process. So those prospective candidates that we decided to interview, we would send them a link, say, here's our strategic plan, check it out. And then in the interview, we would ask those candidates, what do you think about our strategic plan? And those who had taken the time to read it and really internalize it and understand what was important to us as an organization, as a community, those candidates always rose to the top every single time. And the ones who didn't pay much attention, there was an obvious difference in the quality of the candidates. Now, I'm not saying that how well they did that is the sole criteria for making a hiring decision, but I always found it to be really helpful. Another thing like Clearfield City did, frame it and hang it on your walls. It's got to be visible. Share it with neighboring cities and towns and county officials. Hopefully, you've involved them as stakeholders in the entire process. When you start the process, let your county officials know, hey, we're going to adopt a strategic plan. Come be involved, and your neighboring cities and towns as well. And then review it constantly in your staff meetings, in your council meetings, in your retreats, planning sessions, et cetera. Every opportunity you have, get that in the conversation, and then link that to your work plans. This is our last slide. I know we're hitting that hour time limit. Thank you for your patience. As far as timing, be able to give it the attention it requires. If you're wondering, wow, what do we do next? Like there's so much stuff to do. What's the right path forward? What's really important? That's when you need a strategic plan. You really need it. And again, anytime you've got a significant change in leadership or personnel, make sure you've got buy-in from the top. This is very important. If your mayor, if your other elected officials, if your manager, if they're not on board, then I would say take a step back and focus on getting everybody excited about a strategic plan and then move forward. You got to have buy-in from the top. And then along the way, there's going to be all kinds of issues that come up, and maybe they're outside your control. Maybe it's more of a county issue or a neighboring community. You want to filter that stuff out and pass it to the responsible party. So this is our last slide. We're done here. We're going to have some time for Q&A, but maybe the parting thought on all of the presentation today, everything we've covered, is you can do this, and there are going to be so many benefits to your community. So please use those strategic plans that we're going to make available to you as a reference, as a starting point. And then beyond that, there are so many resources available to you. All of us here at the Local Administrative Advisor Program, everyone at the league, we're absolutely here. We would love to help. If you've got questions about any part of the process or how to get started, please feel free at any time to reach out. We would love to help. And let's move to Q&A. As a presenter, I can't see the questions, so I don't know if we've got questions. Liam, I'll turn it over to you to guide us through.
Sounds great. Thanks, Adam. That was amazing. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Let me go back through and make sure I didn't miss anything. And there's nothing in our Q&A. I'll give them 1 second if they wanted to change that, but that was fantastic. Like Adam said, if you're thinking, hey, I want to do that, but I'm not sure where to start, I don't know if we're going to have the right resources, the right person to help us with that, please do reach out to us. You can reach out to me. I can include my email here, and I can help you get in touch with your local administrative advisor, and every single one of those local administrative advisors has access to us at the league and to some veteran city managers like Adam who can help you work through creating one of these for your community. So if that's something you're interested in, please do reach out and let us know so we can help you out with that. With that though, we don't have any questions, no other comments. So we will give everyone a whole 2 minutes back of their scheduled time. Thanks, Adam, and thanks everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.